It's been almost 5 years since Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opened up at Disneyland Park. And as attendance numbers continue to be questioned, Disney has finally made a big change and added actual John Williams music to the park. Let's talk about what took them so long here on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place. And here with me is VashSky. Vash, how's it going this morning? Bright suns to you, sir.
Bright suns to you. I was just about to say, I was like, wait a minute, you're not using the Star Wars vernacular. If we're going into Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, Jonas, you see, you have to speak like them. So strollers become, I think, like little speeders.
Perambulators? I don't know.
Yeah.
The bathrooms become refreshers, and cast members become cast members who have a legitimate backstory that we didn't even ask them to make. That was a super awkward video from Bob Chapek. Galaxy's Edge is an example of one of the strangest theme park experiments that ever happened. First of all, it was going to be a lot larger, and when I say larger, I mean in scope. Obviously, the land is pretty big. Out there at Disneyland, I think they used as much space as they could. But when they went over to Walt Disney World, they said, no, we want it to match, as opposed to making it bigger than that Disneyland version. There were a lot of things that were going to be in there, constant interactions with characters. It was very focused on that, you could say, live action role play aspect of the park. The food all had different names, even though, it might have been chicken fingers and other things that you would recognize. I think the food was probably a little bit better than that, but they had menus that didn't even have any normal annotations on them. And then all of a sudden, a few weeks later, you have English words right underneath them saying, no, I need you to know that's the grilled cheese sandwich here.
Yes.
Have you been to Galaxy's Edge, Vash?
Oh, many times. I was actually part of the first wave of guests who were able to get access to the land before it officially opened. I think it was for AP previews. I can't remember the setting, but it was kind of a controlled preview system that they had there. And that was definitely part of that for sure. I remember the sporks that they used to have that people unfortunately stole immediately, and so they had to take those away. But they made so many promises. I remember Chapek standing on stage in front of this bantha type creature and going, oh, that's going to be cool. Obviously never got that. The restaurant they were supposed to have, that's, August Cantina was supposed to be the precursor to. That didn't come about right there. There's so much. The Legends of Frontierland. I don't know if, Jonas, if you were familiar with that game.
I've heard a little bit about it.
Right. It was a playtest that was actually performed in Disneyland, and it was to set up the fact that there was going to be a similar type game, but using the infrastructure of Galaxy's Edge as its setting, and you would kind of battle for territory within Galaxy's Edge itself. It was a phenomenal idea. And unfortunately, almost none of those things came to pass.
Right. And a lot of those interactivity elements ended up being little games that you could play on the Disney Play app, not the My Disney Experience app. So you now have another app that you could switch to in your parks experience in order to interact with these touch points around the galaxy. I remember seeing people in line saying, how do you do this? And I told them how to do it. And my kids wanted to do it. And then I reminded them that, no, I kind of need my cell phone, kids. I'm not going to hand you my cell phone. Or I could play it myself. But the gameplay was not exactly the kind of thing that, I'd rather open up a session of solitaire on my phone. I think that would be a little bit more engaging than most of the things they had around. It was a neat idea, or some of these ideas of actors going throughout the land. One particular is Doc Ondar, the animatronic for Doc Ondar. By the time that I went there, Doc Ondar was down. But in fact, out there at Walt Disney World, the Doc Ondar animatronic still been broken for weeks at Disney's Hollywood Studios, is either behind a curtain or shut down here. I can point that out. This one from Blog Mickey. But that's not the purpose of this video. What I'm wanting to establish here is that we were promised one thing and given another. For instance, in the investor days, I should pull up the story for this, but we don't really have time today. There were X-Wing drones that were flown around in order to show off what this land could be. Well, those were given one flight, and now those drones are literally in a museum somewhere, donated as part of Disney history, never to be used again. Here is where it gets a little weird for me. I've said in the headline here what's going on. They finally added Star Wars music, and they've done it in a specific way, only happens at a specific time of the evening. Okay, I'll just go ahead and put the story up, and then we can discuss from here. Bard droid added to Fire of the Rising Moons in Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. For those of you who are not aware of what this is, what is Fire of the Rising Moon, Vash?
Fire of the Rising Moons is to provide a reason for why you have pyrotechnics shooting off beyond Black Spire Outpost right there, which is the fictional town that is encompassed by Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. It's important to kind of set the context here that the launch point for Disneyland is literally right behind those rocks there. And so there really hasn't previously been a story reason as to why this happens. And I say that because everything has a story supposedly in Galaxy's Edge. There's a purpose behind everything and so forth. And it's very, very structured, almost to the point of killing what would otherwise be enjoyment for others.
Wait, but so let me stop you there, because I think you've skipped over something here. So there were already pyrotechnics visible in Galaxy's Edge this entire time.
Oh yeah, because that is the fireworks launch point for the park.
Right. So this is the nighttime spectacular that always goes on for Disneyland. Correct. But now Fire of the Rising Moons is, if you watch it from Galaxy's Edge, you essentially get a different show with different theming that uses the same pyrotechnic displays. And Fire of the Rising Moons is the Star Wars side of the same show. So it's essentially you can select this other show here. So this has happened the entire time, but they weren't playing the Disneyland, the castle area music.
Nope. No, they were not.
Why were they not doing any music
before?
I think I know why.
I wanted something like this to be added to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge since this area opened in the summer of 2019.
So I had thought this was a new show out there at Disneyland. I didn't understand that this was actually just repurposing what was already there. So first of all, this is a great idea. Second, now that I know that this has been there the entire time, I wonder, well, why did it take them so long why did it take so long for it to occur to them that these are visible from Galaxy's Edge? Inside Galaxy's Edge, you're supposed to be inside of the story the entire time. So there's no in-universe reason for there to be fireworks going off. And they're not going to play the music inside the Galaxy's Edge speakers, which they have. Obviously, they have at this point. I don't know if they weren't installed or what, but there are also announcements that go around Galaxy's Edge. Am I correct?
At first, there were no announcements at all. The fireworks kind of happened. But they've had the infrastructure to do this ever since the land opened, because they actually have a Dolby Atmos system that's been meticulously created and spread throughout the land. It provides like a matrix of sound that could provide all kinds of sound effects of like ships flying, but also moments that were supposed to happen with sun shows and so forth that this whole land is set up for. Oh yes, this could have been implemented on day one. They just didn't do it.
So this is so fascinating to me, because these things cost $1 billion to put together, these lands, both at Hollywood Studios and at Disneyland. So at this point, there is this droid that has been added, the Bard droid, and it's an oversized droid. If I'm reading this angle correctly, I think he's oversized so that people can see him. This droid is supposed to read out some kind of thing about how he's the droid that belonged to the Lore Weaver, and the Lore Weaver's voice is the one you're hearing, even though it sounds a lot like Yoda. It's not Yoda. It's not. He doesn't do the Yoda phrasing, because that gets a little irritating the longer the phrase goes. And now, and this is the important thing, they are finally playing the Star Wars theme in Galaxy's Edge. This theme park that is entirely marketed on nostalgia for Star Wars finally got with the times and realized that maybe if you're going in and charging $200 to $250 for a lightsaber, maybe you ought to inspire people. Maybe you got to put that idea in their brains that they want to be the hero of their Star Wars story. And what better way to do that than play the music that John Williams wrote for Star Wars?
Yeah, so famously, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge doesn't have any music at all, or at least it didn't when it originally opened. Then they were like, well, Oga's Cantina is kind of a soundtrack that we can play in some places, so they did play it in some places, but it was totally absent of any music whatsoever, John Williams or not. And a lot of people criticized this land early on, and rightfully so, I would say, for not incorporating that music. And why was that the case? Well, this is why we had this the front of the show so packed with what could have been, because that plays into this story as well. The entertainment or the music of the land was supposed to be provided by actors and entertainers in the land itself. And so what you got was ambient sound that was supposed to obviously be added to by performers actually working in the land itself.
So even the Imperial March, they didn't have the Imperial March playing when the First Order is going around?
Nope.
Man. That's just ridiculous. Okay, so I mentioned it before, but it bears repeating. Harry Potter Land. There's obviously a huge difference in Harry Potter world, but it's not the same as Galaxy's Edge. When you're walking through the Harry Potter land, you might hear the same 4 Harry Potter tracks played while you're just walking around the land. I forget if it's in the ambience of the land itself, or if the closer you get to one of the shops or something, they are constantly playing that music in those plans. And there's not that much. By the way, it's also a John Williams soundtrack. When they decided to do Galaxy's Edge, it was supposed to be a direct response to Harry Potter. Oh, this is what we're going to do. They've got these wands that they're charging $60 a piece. Well, we'll have lightsabers. We'll have some of the cheapo lightsabers that you can, toss to a kid and not feel bad about it. By the way, don't open them up or take them out in the land. Or we also have these $200 lightsabers. We're going to go for the big ticket item. We're going to do this Savi experience where you go in and it's the lore and all of this about activating everything. But you better stick that thing back in the sheath as soon as you're done with it, because you cannot take it out and wave that thing around in the land. You can take it out for a picture, but you better put that thing right back into its sheath. By the way, there was a little while where they were still charging that $200 price point, and it was a plastic bag instead of that cool sheath that they give you. Now, Harry Potter, on the other hand, they give you the wands. They don't give you the wands. They sell you the wands. They're $60 a pop. And I know people who own multiple wands. I don't know many people who own a lot of those Galaxy's Edge lightsabers. But you have those things out constantly when you're in the Harry Potter land. You better have it handy. In fact, I think the next time I go, I might sew a little wand pocket into my shirt or my belt or something and just be an absolute nerd about it, because there are things all over that land that interact with the wands. Or you could get the data pad. Okay, this is a video that is ostensibly about Star Wars music being added to the parks. But really what this video is about is that Disney is finally getting their act together here with Galaxy's Edge. They have had the blueprint for so long on how to fix this land. They couldn't sell a little armband that you could do, or a little like force token or something that you could put on your hand and put it on your palm, that kids, since you're just a Padawan, we'll sell you this little item that helps you to focus the Force, and you can use it in this spot. And it's almost the exact same mechanic that I'm thinking of here as the Harry Potter world, and let kids pretend like they are doing it. And by the way, that makes it seem like it's more of a kid thing to like it's training wheels for a Padawan. There's just so much about this land that they could have made it fun for everybody. But instead, they essentially turned it into a dirty open air market where it's only the sequel films, and the sequel films are not as popular. Why did it take 5 years for them to take one of the best parts of every single Star Wars film? There are people who don't like the prequels that love the John Williams soundtrack to the prequels. The sequels, no one has ever said anything bad about the John Williams music in the sequel trilogy. Why did it take this long, Vash? Wrap us up by telling us what has changed and why did it take this long?
It's hubris, and I think Junk 3PO may have mentioned this when covering the Jenny Nicholson video, but he said it best. There's a hubris. There is an arrogance with Lucasfilm. It's like, you know what? Whatever we do, it is going to be the definitive version, and there is no changing unless we just close things down. In the case of the Galactic Star Cruiser, or we'll be it's like pulling teeth. We'll be kicking and screaming if we change things in this way and aren't consistent with our original vision. That was so magnanimous or so amazing. That's the biggest heartbreaking thing about Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, honestly, because they spent $1 billion on a land dedicated to Star Wars, and yet we got almost nothing from it that what we wanted or were even promised. The Force stuff that you were talking about before, they had plans for that. Cut at the last moment. Music throughout the land, they had plans for that as well. Cut at the last moment. It was supposed to be a dedication to all Star Wars, and we only got the sequel trilogy. And so it's heartbreaking because this was supposed to be the Potter Swatter, but it has never materialized into the land that it could and should be.
Yep. I think you're absolutely right. And of course, we will be talking about that Jenny Nicholson, that amazing 4-hour video. There's a lot that can be said about it, and she did an excellent job. We'd like to put our That Park Place spin on it. Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern time. We've got a lot to talk about. I was actually thinking about how it could have been done differently, or even how it could have been saved. And I think I've got some good ideas here. They're kind of a moot point, but we're going to be talking about the other aspects of the Disney parks experience, and I think you're not going to want to miss that. With that being said, let's throw this to our commenters. Does this help at all? I know there's a lot of people that don't want to do Disney at all right now, but does this push them in the right direction, positive or negative, anything like that? We want to know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.